Hello and welcome to Ecolust Live. We are Hayley and Chris from Ecolust Live, and this is our third live that we are doing in our Facebook group, Sustainable and Intentional Lifestyle. And the topic is how to complete your goals. And we are basing our expertise today off the book called Finish, Give Yourself the Gift of Done by Jon Acuff. So I read this recently and I found a lot of his points really resonated with me. So I'm trying to incorporate them into my life. Meditation, Chris mentioned that you can read this book in a really quick and short version using Blinkist. So I just want to explain what Blinkist is. Basically, it's an app that you can use on your phone, or it's a desktop platform, and you take non-fiction books, and they've got lots on there. They're also sorted into different categories, so it's easy to find what you're interested in. And basically, they've summarised the most salient points from those non-fiction books into what they call blinks. So it's typically 12 to 15 blinks that take about quarter of an hour to get through. And you can either read them or you can download the audio and listen to it in podcast version. And I find this a really convenient way to get through non-fiction books because I don't always find them so pleasurable to read. They kind of feel like a hard slog sometimes, but I do really want to learn this stuff. So sometimes I'll only read Blinkist. Sometimes it gives me a really good starting point to see whether I'm more interested in reading a book, and then I can go read the full version. But it's made a vast improvement to my learning capabilities, and we have a link available. So if you're interested, you can get a free trial.
Yeah, I think it's great. Like right before this, I probably listened to the blinks twice, and they took, maybe 4 or 5 minutes. So you can get all the information from these blinks. I know it's just a brief summary. But I guess, if you want to read one of these books more in depth, then you understand the basic principles of it first before committing to a full book. So I think that's a good way to sort of dabble in a few different topics that you like. And then, if you want to read further into it and you're really interested, then get the book and support the author as well. But
if you're time poor, it's a great way to learn.
Yeah, you can really smash them out.
All right, let's get started on today's topic, which is how to complete your goals. So it's January at the moment. I'm sure a lot of you have set New Year's resolutions for 2020. Not sure how your particular resolutions are going towards the end of the month, but it would not be unusual if you've kind of slackened off a little bit towards your goal. So I want to talk about how we can work towards actually completing the goals that we set and addressing the idiosyncrasies within ourselves that may prevent us from achieving those goals. So as I said earlier, our knowledge today is based on the book Finish, Give Yourself the Gift of Done by Jon Acuff. So I read this and Chris read the Blinkist, and then we're going to litter our points with some personal anecdotes and I think important reflections, because every time we learn more about living sustainably and intentionally, I think it's just really beneficial to us. We realize what we're actually doing wrong in our lives and what we need to change.
Yeah, I think books like this are important because they do encourage self-reflection and honesty with yourself too. Like I think a lot of us hold behind a barrier where, we avoid looking at ourselves and our behaviors honestly. And, that came up last week with intentional money, looking at your budget honestly and actually looking at where your money's going really helps you decide where you want your money to go in the future. So I think there's some really good points throughout this book and what we're going to cover today.
I think a basic understanding first is to recognize that something we come back to time and time again is time and energy and money are limited resources. And so when you set a goal, you have to realize that when you put those resources towards achieving that goal, it's going to detract from other things. So you need to have a really strong why or a really strong reason for why you want to complete a goal. Otherwise, you're not going to get there. Let's jump into the first point, which is perfectionism. And this is something that I really needed to read because I am a perfectionist. And I used to think that that was a good quality in me because I did things to a really high standard. But I have since realized that it's more of a handicap. It's something that actually sets me back in my progress. And it's not just in my personal life, like even when I worked corporate, I was a bid coordinator. So I had some really big projects and strict deadlines that I had to meet. And I really had to learn that done is better than perfect, especially when you are receiving contributions for those bids from lots of other people and their work may not be up to your standard. I found that I was using up so much time trying to edit their stuff when everyone else would consider it done. So perfectionism, like, it's good to have a high standard of output, but you need to realize that progress towards something is better than perfect progress. So let's use the example of, I don't know, what's a goal? I don't know, like you want to run a marathon. So you create a running plan and you say, I'm going to run 20 kilometers every day to train for this marathon. And maybe you do that the first week. And then the second week you only run 10 kilometers and you think, I'm not living up to my goal. I'm not making perfect progress. And then you give up. But really, you're still running 10 kilometers that helps you train towards your goal. Like, it's still progress. So it's important to realize that just because you can't be perfect in all of your work towards attaining a goal doesn't mean that you're not still making progress. And it's important not to give up.
Yeah, I think my example would be when I'm writing something, I'm going along and I'm editing every time I make a mistake, or I reread each sentence just to make sure the grammar is right. And, it takes a long time to get through a whole post or a whole article or anything like that. Whereas I should just be writing as I'm thinking about it, going through the whole story process and then going back and editing and sort of doing it as a batch work instead of, writing a sentence, going back, rereading it, and then looking at the whole paragraph, making sure it all makes sense. Like, it is important to do that, but maybe I could do it in a different way where instead I'm writing the whole post or the whole article, going back and then making the adjustments from there. And
so what you're saying is that your quest for perfectionism while you're writing, first of all, it's impeding your productivity and your efficiency. But secondly, it's probably impeding your creativity. So I think this is a big thing with adults is we always try to do things really well. And that's probably from inside and outside influence. But we don't let ourselves make mistakes or be creative. So I think if you try to shirk that pressure to have a perfect outcome, you might even do a better job.
And your example, did you go through your example or you're doing another example here? Like presentation standards? Yeah,
so basically thinking that perfect is better than done, that's a mistake. Done is better than perfect.
Yeah. So where are you moving on to now?
So there's this lie that people believe, and it is perfectionism is attainable so long as we follow certain rules. So, for example, if something isn't immediately successful, it's a failure. So in the book, these are referred to as your cuckoos, or basically your crazy thoughts. And they're often subconscious, so it can be hard to determine what your cuckoos are. So I think whenever you find yourself making an excuse to do something towards your goal, identify what that excuse is and try to think, why do I think that? Where does that come from? And is that even true? And that's the process to find your cuckoo, or to find your subconscious form of, self-sabotage.
Yeah, I believe this is definitely one of your biggest stumbling blocks when it comes to your goals. And it is because you're so critical of yourself, which a lot of people are. Like, you are your biggest critic, and I think it comes through with this perfectionism thing.
So a lot of people don't take any steps towards their goals because of perfectionism, and it's actually more common and more of an inhibitor towards your progress than laziness. Like, often I would write myself off as being lazy, but really it's really just a form of self-criticism that's stopping me from doing something to some ability if I can't do it to my best ability.
And the next point here is, something will always get in the way, but it's the actions after something goes wrong that separates the finishers from the quitters. So you need to really develop the tolerance for imperfection. Yeah,
so you can have the best intentions to work towards a goal, but something's always going to get in the way because that's life. So maybe you get sick, or maybe something takes up your time, or maybe you have an unexpected expense which stops you being able to pay for what you need towards achieving your goal. Things are always going to happen, but you need to develop a sense of resilience to go, all right, that was both a problem and unexpected, but I'm still going to keep going. And maybe my goal doesn't get finished at the expected time, but that's okay because I'm still going to achieve my goal. And I think resilience against your own perfectionism is a really important skill to develop.
And the other thing too is when we're talking about these big goals we're setting at the start of the year, everyone has a New Year's resolution. It can come to a time where that goal isn't as you imagined it would be, or imagined your progress going. So a lot of the time you'll only do a goal until it is not perfect anymore. So this perfectionism comes in that way as well. So you have this vision of the goal and how you're going to progress, but then life gets in the way. And then you stumble, or you miss a meal that you thought would be healthy, or you don't go to a gym on a certain day because you don't feel like it, and then that starts snowballing, and then your whole goal is gone by then.
What was your big goal last year, other than traveling the world?
It was running a marathon. So I'd read the book by David Goggins, and I got into running, and I'm like, I'm going to run a marathon this year. We're traveling. This would be a really good opportunity to do a marathon overseas, and traveling got in the way. So I didn't run as much as I should have, or I didn't even...
At all?
I ran sometimes.
No, you went on one 12-kilometer run because you got lost.
That was a bit silly. But that's still a goal of mine, and we'll get into cutting your goal in half, which is definitely an easy one for running a marathon, because they have half marathons, which I think is very achievable, where a marathon is quite a top goal of mine that may take a year or so to achieve. So
why is it a goal of yours?
I just think it's a good accomplishment.
Is it stemming from ego?
Possibly, but I think I want to test myself, and I think the mental toughness of running really resonates with me. You could run a marathon tomorrow. You could. Physically, you could do it. But it's the mental toughness that really gets in the way. So it's that mental thing of, I just need to keep going. This is hard. You have all these, barriers within yourself, within your mind. And I think running a marathon is a true test of your character and your mental toughness. So I think, that for me, that is a goal I would like to achieve for myself.
I think that's a good answer, and that I no longer think it's stemming from ego.
Good, I win.
Okay, that's from ego. Okay, moving on to our second point, and that is planning fallacy. So basically this means underestimating how long it takes to complete a task, and this is very, very common. It's also setting unrealistic goals within a certain time frame, and this term comes from psychologists Daniel Kahneman and Amos Tversky, probably mispronounced those names. But yeah, have a think about what your goals are and how long you've set to complete them, and what some other barriers along the way could be impeding that, and could you remove those barriers to make it more realistic to achieve your goal within the set time frame, or are they life and you can't remove them and maybe need to readjust your time frame?
Yeah, again, this is going back to looking at your life and what you can achieve honestly. And we all set high targets for ourselves because you know, we want to have a legacy. We want to have a great life. You know, we are the star of our own movie. So we want to have a great life. And, you know, you set these goals with big ambitions, and that's fine and that's great. But we do sometimes need to look at what we can honestly achieve. And that's takes some self-reflection and some, you know, hard inner work as well. So we would love to hear if anyone's sort of struggled with perfectionism or even planning fallacy, and making sure that you guys understand what these terms are and we're explaining them properly. So if you are in here still and you want to just share something that maybe a goal that you haven't achieved because you know that perfectionism has come in the way, or maybe it hasn't and you're pretty good at that, and that's cool too. So
yeah, if you could let us know your goals in the comments section, that'd be cool. And maybe identify if perfectionism or planning fallacy or any of the other points we're going to discuss might be a factor for you completing your goal.
So going to cut your goal in half. So this is a really easy way to then feel like it's less ambitious, I guess. The goals that you've set is look at them honestly and go, okay, well, if I cut this in half, what does that mean? Like I've cut everything in half, like the work, the time, everything like that. So that just becomes so much more achievable. And then
no, it's not the time.
Okay.
It's like you still have the same time limit,
right.
but you just do half as much.
I more meant the time it's going to... Yeah, okay, that makes sense. So you're still setting the goal for, say, 3 months to run a marathon, for example. But if I do a half marathon, I think that's much more achievable and not so intimidating. And maybe I don't have to try and get up to, 20 kilometers a day to then run a marathon. I can only do 5 to 10 and then maybe a big run on a Saturday, which is like 12 Ks to then, run the 21 kilometer half marathon.
So studies have shown that when people cut their goal in half, their performance goes up by 63%. So it shows how much believing that you can actually achieve your goal affects your ability to complete it.
So this is one that I've definitely struggled with in my life, because I always like to be really good at everything I do. So if there is something that I'm not good at, it takes me a long time to either do it or it gets in the way of me completing other goals.
Yeah, I'm the same. If I'm not good at something, I really won't stick at it.
And I think, it's a shame as adults that we feel this way, and I'm not sure when it happens in someone's life, but I know, when you're a child or even like a teenager, you're not good at everything and you're always starting from scratch, basically.
I was always good at everything.
Me too, but yeah, I'm talking for all the other...
This is why we're such flawed adults.
But basically, we lost that feeling of we're starting at the bottom and then the challenge is to get better at it, and we enjoy the challenge of it.
Yeah, or just enjoy the process. Like enjoy the learning, enjoy trying, enjoy sharing it with other people, expressing yourself. Whatever comes along the way of doing something without even achieving a goal per se. Yeah.
And I really like, when you do start to do this and you then find the process and you go, oh, okay, I remember this. I remember failing, like if you treat them as lessons and all those sorts of things, there's a lot of mental toughness that comes around starting from scratch or, starting something when you're older. Like a lot of people, they're stuck in their ways and they go, oh, I'm too old to start that.
So, for example, I had a thought the other day that I might start sewing my own clothes. And this comes from, I love clothes and I always have. And I always think of nice clothes that I would like to wear or cool designs. But it's always such a mission to then find those clothes in shops and still meet the criteria that I try to meet when I make a consumer decision, because I want to be a conscious consumer. So I have to go through the things like, where does the material come from? Like, is it sourced in Australia? Is it a sustainable material? Like, will it biodegrade or will it release microplastics into the ocean? What are the working conditions for the people making my clothes? Who owns the company? Are those people getting paid fairly? Things like that. And then also I need to like it, and it needs to suit me, and it needs to be affordable, and it needs to be convenient for me to purchase. So I was like, fuck all this. I am just going to make my own clothes. But I've never been like an academic rebel in my entire life. But year 8 home ec, I was just like, no, this is not for me. I am so above this. I don't need a denim pencil case in my life. I don't care if I can't sew a piece of paper straight. I'm not doing this anymore. And here I am, I don't know, almost 2 decades later, wishing that I had paid more attention in home ec class. My point is, I am fearful of this new task because I think that I won't be very good at it, but I still want to do it. But I also wonder if, as adults in this modern life where we have so many demands on our time and the cost of living is so high and, drains on our energy, things like that, is it harder to throw yourself into a creative pursuit or even a new hobby or even like throw yourself properly into achieving a goal because we don't have enough time or money or energy? Yeah,
it'd be interesting to know if you guys want to throw it in the comments if you've started something when you're older and how you went with it. Like, what did it feel like to start something? I know Michelle, if she's still in here, like she started going back to university and is really loving it. You know, she wanted to do this subject or this course when out of school, but sort of life got in the way when you're young and you're partying and all those sorts of things. And now she's doing it and loving it and doing really well at it. So I think, that's very inspirational to do that, especially because she's got a couple of kids as well. So I think there's a lot of barriers for people like that. And, I started university when I was maybe 27 or 28. And I had to actually do courses in writing essays. I had to go back to square one almost to do all those things where there's like a lot of young kids straight out of school who knew all that stuff.
It was those like extracurricular skill building classes you did because you hadn't studied for a decade. Yeah,
so it's like you have to do that extra stuff, and I really enjoyed the process, but it's intimidating to not even start that process as well. So
yeah, I wonder, like, are we pushed into setting goals for ourselves that have some sort of maybe like financial benefit? Or, is it a health goal, or is it something for our family that's almost like a selfless goal that you want to achieve? Like, are we encouraged in society these days to pursue goals that don't have a tangible impact on our lives?
Yeah, I think that's definitely a barrier for a lot of people.
I just made this up, by the way. It's not from the book.
So what are we up to?
Okay, so again, letting yourself be bad at some things to finish important work. So an example from my own life is I have all of these different categories of goals that are in my life. So like relationships, money, health, work, I don't know, other things. And ideally, I would like to be on top of all of them. And I have created systems for each of those goals in each category and scheduled them into my calendar. But I am learning that I can't do all of the things all of the time really well.
Yep.
And sometimes I have to let some things go so that the really important things can get done. And I am comfortable with letting housework fall to the wayside. And yeah, sometimes we might be really in need of vacuuming and we'll do it when it really needs doing, but we're not going to always be on top of our vacuuming game.
Yeah.
And another thing that I let slide is socializing. And I'm trying to work out if that's something I'm okay with or not, because one of my biggest values is connection. But I'm also someone who really enjoys my own company, and I do find too much socializing to be a real drain on me, like an introvert. So I think that I'm okay with really minimizing the time I spend socializing so that I can concentrate on my other goals that are fulfilling to me.
Yeah, I think we have a bit of a difference in that, where I'm always the one, not always, I'm the one filling up our schedule with social.
All of our time.
Like even this weekend, like I'm inviting our friends over for breakfast, and then we got invited to this thing on Saturday, and Saturday and Sunday were then almost booked up, where like Sunday
after an exhausting week.
Yeah. Like we started the week on the back foot just because we had the weekend away, and then now we've come back straight into our new jobs and things like that. Things have gotten in the way, but yeah, I'm more Yeah, I realize, and I try and respect your boundaries a bit more. I know that I do push them a little bit with as far as socializing goes, but yeah, I've talked about this a couple of times now, but I have FOMO and I love sharing experiences with people, and I think I just like to fill my time with seeing people and talking and conversing.
But that's okay, because you're an extrovert. Like, that energizes you.
Oh, I'm extra.
being around people, whereas it's the opposite for me.
Yeah, and I do have to try and think of that more and respect it more, but you know, my life is good.
Okay. All right. Next point, make your goals fun. You're not going to want to achieve your goals if they suck, whether it's the goal itself or whether it's the process to get there.
Yeah.
So, for example, we have a goal to get 10,000 downloads per month of our podcast this year. I think that's a fun goal. Mm-hmm. Like, I would be genuinely really proud and happy if we were to achieve that. And the work for us to get there is really enjoyable.
Yeah. Like, we love doing this, and, you know, we've taken a break from Instagram at the moment just because it's not what we enjoy doing. It doesn't serve us. It doesn't make us happy. You know, you need to find how you feel after doing something. Like, did you get in a flow state, which is quite important. Maybe we can do that in a different live, like flow states and things like that.
Does that way of spending your time spark joy? Marie Kondo your time.
But yeah, do you feel more energized after doing something towards a goal, or do you feel less energized? That's a good way to see if it's actually something that you enjoy doing.
Sometimes we have goals imposed upon us, like, for example, try to get a promotion, but achieving that goal may not actually feel good. And working towards that goal may not feel good either. So I think if you have a standard of making your goals fun, then that's going to help you question whether you actually want to work towards and achieve a goal.
And then you need to have these, we'll go into data as well. I think that's in the next couple of points, but you need to be setting yourself deadlines if that's how you achieve your goals, and then having even mini deadlines. So then at the end of that deadline, maybe you can even give yourself a treat, you know, like that could be a way to make your goal fun by giving yourself those deadlines, treating yourself, you know, go out to the movies or do something that you really enjoy just for you. Feel a little bit selfish after giving all your time and energy to a goal of yours. That you may be expending all your energy extrinsically, which we don't recommend, but there is those goals in life that we need to do. So
I think recognize what it is that lights your fire. So do you respond to deadlines? Do you respond to positive rewards? Or are you really just a sort of like head down, bum up, slog it out type of person?
Yeah. And I think it's important to, you know, go back to that first live we did with intentional living and know what your values are, and even go back and do that exercise that we have available to find out what your top 2 values are. That will really help you align what your goals are and what makes you happy. And, you can put those values into your goals to then give you more energy and make them more fun, and see how that works for you.
Yeah, because the more enjoyable you find your goal, the more likely you are to achieve it. And if you do want that values exercise, just leave a comment and we can email it to you.
Cool. So our next one is noble barriers. So this includes, you know, life stuff getting in the way where you go, oh, I'm married and I have children and I do not have time for anything else. This is what's going to take up my life now. And I think these are important to recognize at least, and to say, okay, well, is that who I really want to be? Is this who I want to is this what I want to fill my life with, or am I doing it to avoid chasing other goals in my life?
Yes, so noble barriers and perfectionism are the ones that resonate most with me. And my understanding of noble barriers is, say if you set a goal, but you keep finding yourself not doing the work to get there because other things get in the way. And those other things that get in the way are like your noble pursuits that you martyr yourself for. So it's like saying, I want to be an entrepreneur, but to be an entrepreneur takes a lot of time and money, and I wouldn't be able to be a loving and devoted spouse if I was spending all of my time slogging away at work. My marriage is important to me, therefore I won't put in the work towards developing as an entrepreneur. Another example would be, say, if you have fitness goals and you want to get to the gym every morning, but you have a lot of work to do. And so you tell yourself, I don't have time to go to the gym because I've got all of this work to do. Now, it's admirable that you're getting your work done, sure, and other people also will applaud you for it, but it's also just an excuse. It is a barrier that you are letting yourself get in the way of achieving your goal.
And this could be even outside pressures. You know, you could be doing that extra work so you look good for the boss or you look good amongst your colleagues instead of doing the things that you know you should be doing. So I'll talk about this a bit later as well, but you know, we talk about this book a lot, The War of Art, and resistance is a big one, and you'll get more and more resistance the closer you are to doing the things that you love. You know, you'll find an excuse or something that is more important, in inverted commas, in the way. And yes, this can be outside pressures doing that. So you need to look at, okay, why am I actually doing this work? Is this serving me? Is this serving my goal? And if it is not, then you need to cut it away and really focus more on that goal. Yeah,
so if you are, say if you have a goal and then you actually spend all of your time lying on the couch watching Netflix, that's a barrier. It's easy to go, all right, I'm just being lazy, I'm procrastinating, I need to not do that anymore. And then suddenly you don't have any barriers in the way towards achieving your goal. But if it's a noble barrier, that's really hard to put to the side. And it comes back to recognizing that, again, we have limited time and money and energy. And so you really do need to prioritize where you're going to put those limited resources. Are you going to focus on your goal, or are you going to let your noble barriers take priority?
Yeah, it'd be interesting to know if you guys have recognized any noble barriers in your life, or if you can think of anything that may have come up in the past that has become a noble barrier for you, and how you got around that.
I wonder if your social life is a noble barrier.
I would say yes.
That only just occurred to me because, all right, so we've got this really busy week and we're like so drained from it and we really need to recharge our batteries, but we've also got like our side hustle stuff to work on. But we don't work on any of that side hustle stuff because we're spending our entire weekend socializing. Is that because that's a big value of yours? Or could it also be because you recognizing that your social life is a value also be a noble barrier?
Well, yeah, I didn't realize we were doing an intervention live on the internet. But yeah, when I was talking about that just before, and then we went into noble barriers, it did come up for me just then. Then I was like, oh, okay, I think there is a part of that. You know, like I look at our weekend, I'm like, oh, we're not doing anything. What can I fill it with?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, 2 days where we're not busy from dawn till dusk. Let's fill that immediately.
Yeah. What's life without busyness?
That should be another thing.
Oh, yeah.
Say no to busy or something.
But
what's the noble barrier of mine?
Work.
Elaborate, please.
You'll continue to work and think you're doing all these important things, which you are, I have no doubt.
And very important.
But you'll work at really weird times, or things will come up, and then, you're just working and your head down, and like, yeah, it's work for sure, is for you.
I didn't expect that response.
What did you think it would be?
I thought it might be like...
reading.
Okay. We don't need to comment on my Haley time. I thought it would be procrastinating.
Oh, yeah. You maybe have a lot.
But
maybe you need the intervention of me.
I don't procrastinate much with, like, dumb things.
No.
I procrastinate with other work that's not as necessary as the more important work.
Oh, for sure. We have like important things and deadlines, and then you're creating another list. I think planning fallacy is your big one too. But we might jump into a leader's question, because we sort of touched on this, and I want to get to this question because I think it's a really good one. And, I'd love to hear other people's answers to this as well. So a leader says, what if a goal is put on you by someone else? How do you achieve it without feeling super drained? And I think we've all been here. I think we can all relate to this question. And it's a hard one to answer, to be honest.
I guess it depends on what the goal is. But I would say you really need to question whether you deem that goal to be important, or whether the consequences of not pursuing that goal are more important to avoid.
Yeah, I think the consequences part is a big one. You need to go, okay, maybe do a pros and cons. What is in it for you? Like, you may not realize, and you may be resistant to it because it's been forced on you, and you may actually not realize that it will serve you in some way.
Or what's in it for someone who you really care about, and maybe that's why it's been put on you by someone else.
But yeah, like, that's definitely, if you're feeling drained while doing it, you should definitely assess why you're being drained. Is it because it's being pushed on you, or is it the actual thing doesn't align with anything you're doing, and you just feel like it's taking away from that stuff? Because I think that's important to understand as well, so then you can make that decision. Okay, well, maybe I do have to suck this up and do it because it's going to serve me in the long run, or the consequences of not doing it are too high for me to risk as well. So,
and then also I think it's important to set barriers. So if it's not so important to you to achieve this goal, but you still feel like you should do it, have that communication with the person who's setting that goal for you. Like, okay, I will commit to this, but I have also these other priorities, and so maybe it will take longer to achieve the goal, or maybe I need to cut my goal in half, or maybe I won't complete it to the standard that we would otherwise expect. So have that communication and set those barriers so that you're not leaving yourself drained at the end of the day.
Yeah, I think it's important for any girl to be doing this as well. So really good question. Thank you for that.
Yeah, thank you.
So we'll move on to the next point. I think it's using data. So we sort of discussed this right before the podcast because we were a bit not unsure, but
I was just saying I don't really align with this one, but then Chris thought of all of these examples about how I use data. So
yeah, we went over this on the debate of intentional versus a goal. So like you were saying,
do you set a goal or do you set an intention?
Yeah, so you were saying a goal you need to be able to measure, like if you have finished it or if you've completed it. So I guess like going back to making your goals fun and setting those benchmarks and even mini benchmarks, like you need to be able to measure them along the way to know when you've achieved them and be honest with them. So then if you are going to reward yourself when you hit a benchmark, that it's a proper reward and you're not just using that reward as maybe something else or some resistance to get in the way of achieving the goal.
The way I interpret this one is twofold. The first is data will help you overcome perfectionism. So if you can quantify the steps you're taking in some way towards achieving your goal, then you can assess that you are making progress, and that will keep you motivated. And we know now that some progress is better than perfect progress. So you don't always have to be achieving 100% of your incremental steps towards achieving your goal each week or whatever. So going back to that running a marathon one, you don't have to be running 20 kilometers a week to train for a marathon. You can still train 10 kilometers and the data will show you that you're still making progress towards that end goal. Whereas your emotions or your sense of perfectionism or your ego, that will give you a feeling that you're not making progress, and that is what you need to ignore. And that's why you should use data to measure your progress.
Yeah, that's a perfect point. So we'll move on to our final point. So the day before done. So this is very important because I know a lot of us have gotten, 80, 90% of a goal done or almost finished, and then something gets in the way. And I think this, again, comes back to resistance from the War of Art. And, I recommend this book, I think, every week. And, it was funny. After last week's podcast, I recommended it, and my mum read it, and then she was messaging me like going, "Oh my God, this is a crazy book." Yeah. And she was like, "What do you think of the Muse?" And I was like, "Oh God, I'm with a friend right now. I can't be like having such this intellectual conversation." But yeah, it's such a great book. So all resistance is the closer you get to your goal, the closer you are to aligning with your values, the more resistance you're feeling.
Because you really care about it, and so there's more fear associated with it, and that's when your self-sabotage is more likely to kick in, because you care about the outcome, and it plays into your fear of rejection and failure. So if you don't create that ultimate, product that would mean your goal is completed, then there's nothing for people to critique, and therefore there's nothing to perhaps set you up for failure or rejection. Do you have any examples?
I'm sure I do. I guess this is hard for me because like there's a lot of things that I've started and not finished, and I'd probably have to look at, you know, how far I actually got through them. Because like I'm a big believer in, you know, like just because you put the time into something doesn't mean you can cut your losses. Like I think a lot of people can get stuck in that thinking as well. Like
what? Doesn't mean you can. Doesn't mean you shouldn't cut your losses.
Shouldn't. Yeah, correct. Sorry. So yeah, you say have gone to university and you're halfway through and you really don't like what you're doing and you have other opportunities, and you know you then go, oh, I'm just going to stick at it. I've already done 2 years. I'm just going to finish it. And you know, like that is different to what we're talking about here. I think you can reassess that goal and go, okay, this is not going to serve me. I shouldn't. Then you need to assess that goal from where you are, not from what you've done. Because I think you can still cutting your losses is the good option there.
It's perfectly fine to change your goals, to realize you don't want to achieve that anymore. Yeah. You don't want to put the work in that's necessary to achieve it because the final outcome is not worth. It's like the ends don't justify the means.
Yeah. I think that's probably a better way to put it than I know. But yeah, I'm sure there are things in my life. Do you have any examples that you can think of off the top of your head?
Again, I'm thinking of a lot of things that I've started and not completed. I don't think it is for this reason, like the day before done, where like to explain the concept further, it's like you've done everything right, you are pursuing something you enjoy, you've cut your goal in half, you're embracing imperfection, you've overcome your cuckoos, like all of those points we've discussed earlier today, but then suddenly perfectionism strikes the day before done. I'm not sure if the things that I've not completed come from a fear of rejection. I think it's definitely more perfectionism and noble barriers that I suffer from.
Yep. I know someone in particular who has an issue with this, and he's not in here. I'm not going to say who he is either, but yeah, definitely he wants to create a website and he's pretty much done it, but just hasn't published it because his perfectionism and all these other things, and his perfectionism has just grown greater and greater the closer he's got to releasing it. He told me months ago it would be done that weekend and it's still not done. So, you know, there's things like that I know of. Like for me, I'm sure there is, and I'm not.
We're not that enlightened.
Yeah, I know we sound like we are, of course, but yeah. But I think are we at the Q&A now, or?
Yeah.
I think we've covered all our points. It was good.
Yeah, smashed it.